People clapped so long I lost track of when it stopped being polite and started feeling personal. Like they weren't just applauding a speech, they were applauding the myth. My name is Malik Reyes. I'm 48 years old. I live in Washington, D.C., and for most of my life, I've tried to bend the system without letting it break me. Some days I forget where that line is. That night, they handed me a plaque with my name carved beneath words like trailblazer and icon. I gave them a steady smile and a calm thank you, then stood beside the senator who hated me, the mayor who barely knew me, and the donors who tried to buy me 5 different ways. I smiled for the photos, shook the hands, and made sure the cameras caught the version of me they expected. But the moment I got home, I dropped the plaque onto the kitchen counter like it was junk mail and loosened my tie. No lights were on except the one above the stove. Late again, Elena said from behind her wine glass. She sat at the dining table in silk pajamas, eyes scanning her tablet like I'd interrupted her broadcast. 13 years together, and I could still read the temperature by how much wine she poured. 2 fingers meant peace. For meant war. I told you it was the awards dinner, I said, sliding my phone onto the charger. She didn't look up. You didn't mention the after-party. I didn't go. Still no reaction. Just a tight shrug and the sound of her nails tapping glass. I crossed the room and gently touched her shoulder. She flinched, not visibly, but enough. A delay in her breath, the kind you learn to hear when trust gets replaced by tolerance. I missed you, I said, quiet but honest. Did you? She asked, finally meeting my eyes. Her tone was flat. Not angry, just absent. And that was worse. 11-year-old Tasha padded into the room in her socks, clutching a half-solved Rubik's Cube. Her presence snapped the air back into something warmer. Hey, Dad, you win your revolution. Always, I said, crouching down. She grinned, the side of her mouth curling just like mine. Next time, take me. I could have talked them into giving you a trophy too. That made Elena laugh softly, the first sound of life from her in hours. But it passed quickly. The silence returned. Tasha leaned against me and handed over the cube. It stuck, she said. I took it and began rotating it without looking. Just muscle memory. I taught her how to use logic to untangle things. But life, unlike puzzles, doesn't always have a solution. When I looked up again, Elena was gone. The next morning, I found her briefcase open on the kitchen island. Inside was a manila folder half visible under a policy draft. I saw the name Senator Joel Harding in the header and froze. Joel Harding, the same man whose voting legislation we'd spent the past 2 years fighting. Corporate-backed, photo-op obsessed, and publicly at odds with everything we stood for. I skimmed the memo. Collaborative Pathway for Bipartisan Support. It read, Consultation with Elena Martinez Reyes. She hadn't taken my name legally, but apparently she'd borrowed the benefit of it. Later that afternoon, I confronted her. You're working with Harding? I asked, steady as I could. Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't look surprised. It's not like that. What is it like, then? She didn't answer, just kept packing her bag, methodical and calm. I felt something shift in my chest. Not rage, not sorrow, something quieter, like watching a dam crack and knowing the flood hadn't arrived yet. But it would. I guess you missed me too, I said. She didn't respond, but her silence told me everything. 2 nights later, Tasha knocked on my office door just past 11. She never came in uninvited unless something was wrong. Hey, she said, stepping inside barefoot, holding her phone like it weighed more than usual. I closed my laptop and gave her my full attention. What's up, kiddo? She looked down. I heard Elena on the phone. I leaned forward carefully. What kind of phone call? Tasha hesitated, as if she wasn't sure whether this was snitching or survival. She was in the guest room, door half open. She didn't know I was outside. What did she say? She used weird phrases, like, the relocation is nearly secured, and, she won't remember this as a loss if we frame it right. Tasha looked up at me, and something about education abroad. The breath left my lungs slowly. I'd spent years preparing for political attacks. But this? This was the kind of betrayal that didn't come with debate panels, it came with custody hearings. She also met with Joel Harding, Tasha added. I blinked. Where? Remember that fundraiser at the rec hall last weekend? It wasn't a fundraiser. I saw him go into the side entrance with her. They were in there almost an hour. You're sure it was him? She nodded. I checked twice, and he hugged her when they came out. That was the moment the threads connected. It wasn't just political. Elena was trying to leave, and she was planning to take my daughter with her. I reached for my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't touched in 2 years, Amara Keller. She picked up on the second ring. Malik Reyes, she said, no warmth but no hostility either. Thought you forgot how to dial. I need your help, I said. Quietly. There was a pause. Digital or physical? Digital. Phones, emails, drives. Anything you can get on Elena Martinez. She's working with Harding. Amara didn't ask for details. Timeline. Yesterday. She sighed. Send me her login patterns. And get me any devices she leaves unattended. Done. After we hung up, I turned back to Tasha. She was curled up in my office chair, watching me like she was trying to decode something more complex than a Rubik's Cube. Are you mad? She asked. I shook my head. Not at you. She's really leaving, isn't she? I didn't lie. Yeah. I think she is. With me. I didn't answer right away. I just reached out and gently tucked a loose curl behind her ear. I won't let that happen, I said. I promise. Tasha leaned her head against my arm. Neither of us spoke for a while. I should have been planning a counter-campaign, a legal maneuver, an ethical pivot. But all I could think about was how someone I trusted once whispered promises into the same ear that was now pressed against my sleeve. This wasn't just about politics anymore. This was war. Amara worked fast. 3 days after our call, she met me at a quiet corner booth in an Ethiopian cafe near Howard University. No laptops, no phones. Just a plain manila envelope tucked into a menu sleeve. You were right to call me, she said, sliding it across the table. But you're not gonna like what's in there. I opened the folder and scanned the first few pages. My stomach twisted. Encrypted wire transfers small enough to avoid flags, regular enough to build suspicion. From an offshore shell company routed through 2 fronts in the Caymans right back to an account listed under E. Martinez. But the source? Elena used my foundation, I said out loud, voice flat. Amara nodded. Pulled the money right out of your voter literacy grant cycle. She'd been testing the gaps for months. You trained her well. I kept flipping. Screenshots of emails followed. Drafts between Elena and Harding's senior staff, carefully worded but unmistakable in intent. Discussions of a coordinated campaign to cast me as unstable. Privately erratic, emotionally paranoid, fragile under pressure. Language that only made sense if you were building a narrative not just about politics but about custody. I found a scanned document with my name forged beneath a parental concern report filed with the D.C. Department of Child and Family Services. Another page, a typed statement, also fake, describing alleged episodes of aggression at home, conveniently undated and unsigned. Jesus Christ, I muttered, slamming the folder shut. She's laying the groundwork, Amara said. Making you look like a danger to your own kid. Harding's backing it quietly. If she files for full custody, she'll claim emotional endangerment. Of Tasha? Amara nodded slowly. They want her. Not just to hurt you, but to control what she becomes. You've got a brilliant daughter. She's a legacy. And Elena's trying to make her a bargaining chip. I sat back and rubbed my face with both hands. I'd planned protests in 17 cities at once. I'd faced down attorneys, governors, hired lobbyists. But nothing prepared me for this. This wasn't betrayal. This was a coordinated political coup with my family as the battlefield. I need all of it backed up, I said. Twice. 1 copy offline. 1 encrypted. Already done. And I need you on retainer. Quietly. No traces. Amara nodded, her expression unreadable. You planning to go legal? Not yet, I said. Because I wasn't ready for a courtroom. I was ready for war. Back home, I found Tasha sitting on the floor of her room sketching something with her usual focus. When I sat beside her, she didn't look up. Did you find out anything? She asked. I nodded. More than I wanted. She set down her pencil and turned to me. Can you beat her? It was a strange question coming from an 11-year-old. But then again, Tasha had never been typical. I can, I said. But it won't be pretty. She nodded like she understood. Then, after a pause, I don't need pretty. I just need the truth. I hugged her, really hugged her for the first time in weeks. She didn't pull away. The Juneteenth Gala was everything a national broadcast wanted it to be: polished speeches, choreographed performances, red carpet interviews full of borrowed sincerity. And there we were, the picture of unity. I wore a tailored charcoal suit, pin-clipped with my organization's emblem. Elena stood beside me in a deep blue dress that made her look every inch the gracious partner. Not a trace of tension showed as cameras flashed. She smiled at senators, hugged community leaders, and worked the crowd like it was second nature. Senator Joel Harding arrived late, flanked by aides and reporters. When his eyes met mine, he gave a faint nod, polite, distant, pretending we didn't share a war room divided by a woman. Tasha sat 2 rows back with a cousin from Elena's side. She looked out of place in her white cardigan and patent leather shoes, legs swinging just above the floor. Her eyes met mine more than once. She didn't smile. During Elena's speech, a rousing bit about bipartisan unity and the moral courage to reach across lines, I felt Tasha's gaze settle on me again. I turned slightly and saw her small lips moving. "She's lying," she mouthed. After the applause faded, we met backstage, far from the stage lights. Elena wiped her forehead delicately with a handkerchief and smiled at me like we were still playing happy. "You should have heard them," she said, her voice soft, prideful. "They're finally listening." "To you?" I asked. "To both of us," she corrected, too quickly. She leaned in and kissed my cheek for the cameras just behind the curtain. I smiled tight, unblinking, and whispered into her ear, "She knows." Elena pulled back just slightly. "Who?" "Tasha." Her face flickered barely. But I caught it. Later that night, after the speeches and the praise and the cocktails and the photographs were behind us, we got home. Tasha came into my study, holding a cup of hot cocoa she hadn't touched. "Dad," she said. "Yeah?" She sat on the edge of the couch. "Do you think Elena still loves us?" The question hit harder than I expected. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because it came from her. I exhaled through my nose and looked her straight in the eyes. "She loves ambition more." Tasha stared at the floor. Her thumb circled the rim of the cup. No tears. Just understanding. Like something in her had finally caught up with what her instincts already knew. That night, while the house was silent, Elena tiptoed into her office, unaware that Amara had cloned her laptop 2 days earlier. I watched from the security feed as she connected a drive and started dragging files into the trash: documents, call logs, photos. She was trying to cover her tracks. But I already had the map. I watched for exactly 17 minutes, then shut off the feed. Let her clean the surface. The roots were mine now. The morning after the gala, I sent Amara one text. "Ashfall. Now." Within the hour, the first leak dropped. Anonymous sources. A batch of financial records linking Elena Martinez to offshore accounts, paired with documentation of Joel Harding's private commitments to deregulate corporate election oversight. All timed perfectly to hit just days before the Senate's Ethics Subcommittee hearing. The files were scrubbed, rerouted through proxy servers, branded with the digital fingerprints of a whistleblower group we'd worked with years ago. Amara's gift for forensic theater made sure nothing pointed directly to me. By lunch, #HardingFunds Truth was trending. By dinner, major outlets were picking up the story. The second wave came 12 hours later, a 30-second clip of Elena secretly recorded at a private donor's dinner 3 months prior, where she said, laughing into her glass of Merlot, "Grassroots organizers don't understand the real work. They scream into microphones while we write policy." She'd been trying to charm a hedge fund executive. But it played like a declaration of war against everything she'd claimed to support. My inbox lit up with statements of concern, denial, confusion. Her allies went quiet. Harding canceled a planned appearance in Atlanta. Rumors of a DOJ inquiry surfaced by the next day. Back home, the house was silent. Elena hadn't spoken to me since the leak. Not out loud anyway. She moved around the kitchen with that same icy precision, texting furiously between bites of toast. She still wore the mask, calm, composed, but her hands trembled when she reached for her coffee. Tasha watched it all from her spot at the dining table. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. That evening, after dinner, she quietly slid her tablet across the table to me. On the screen was Elena's campaign calendar, including an upcoming closed-door panel with Harding and 2 major corporate donors. "She left it open on her desktop," Tasha said. "I figured you'd want to see." I looked at her, half proud, half heartbroken. "Do you hate her?" she asked. "No," I said after a long pause. "But I don't trust her. And that's worse." I waited until midnight to release the final blow. A polished, carefully edited montage of Elena spliced from years of public panels, town halls, and interviews speaking dismissively about activist naivety and mocking purity politics. intercut with footage of real organizers in the streets, getting arrested, risking jobs. People who used to call her sister. It hit like a freight train. She'd built her brand on integrity. And now that was gone. I never appeared in the footage. I never raised my voice. Never posted a single statement. But in less than 48 hours, I'd burned down everything she thought untouchable. The next morning, I woke to a silent house. Elena was gone. No note. No goodbye. Just her toothbrush missing from the holder. And her side of the closet wiped clean. I stood in the doorway staring at the space she left behind. One match. That's all it took. But the fire had been building for years. 2 weeks after Elena vanished from her home, she resurfaced in court. Her lawyer filed a motion for emergency custody, claiming I was emotionally unstable, career-obsessed, and unfit to provide a nurturing environment. She cited the pressure of my public role, the long hours, and ironically, the recent media storm, which she described as a manifestation of retaliatory behavior. The gall was breathtaking. She walked into the courtroom wearing ivory like it was a renewal ceremony. Harding, now under investigation, was nowhere in sight. But the ghost of his influence lingered in every carefully rehearsed phrase her attorney delivered. She seeks only stability for the child, he said, motioning toward Tasha, who sat beside me in a neat navy blazer and white headband, hands folded calmly in her lap. The judge, a black woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a voice like gravel, turned to me. "Mr. Reyes, do you have any response?" I stood slowly. No dramatics. Just facts. I raised Tasha since she was 4. I've made every educational, medical, and emotional decision in her life. Elena Martinez was part of that journey until she tried to leave the country with my daughter without notice or consent, funded by a political rival whose agenda opposes everything we've built. Her lawyer objected. The judge waved it off. I paused, then added, and in the last month, Ms. Martinez coordinated a covert effort to remove me from my own movement and discredit my character, including forging documents about my parenting. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Do you have evidence?" I nodded. Submitted under seal with supporting testimony from a digital forensics expert. Amara Keller. The judge flipped through the packet, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Tasha. "Would you be willing to speak?" Tasha nodded. She stepped forward with the quiet confidence of someone twice her age. "Elena lied to me," she said, her voice steady. "She told me we were going on vacation. She packed bags and said I'd start school in another country. She said my dad would be too busy to notice." The room went still. Tasha looked directly at Elena. I was scared. And I didn't understand why someone who said she loved me was making me disappear. Elena's jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. "I love my dad," Tasha finished. "He tells me the truth even when it's hard. I trust him." The judge let the silence stretch. Then, finally, this court finds sufficient cause to deny Ms. Martinez's request for custody. Full guardianship is granted to Mr. Reyes, effective immediately. A breath left my body I hadn't realized I was holding. Elena turned to me, eyes desperate now. "You can't shut me out forever." I met her gaze. "You already shut yourself out." Outside the courtroom, Tasha slipped her hand into mine. "I meant it," she said. "I know," I told her. The legal battle was over. But what lingered wasn't victory. It was loyalty. Earned the hard way. A month after the custody ruling, Amara called with something I hadn't expected. "There's one name in Elena's archived messages that didn't make it into the legal bundle," she said. "Why not?" I asked. "Because it's not criminal. It's personal." She emailed me the file. The name on the screen hit like a whisper I'd never heard before. Bennett Klein. A reclusive academic out of Flagstaff, Arizona. Professor of ethics, retired early. The message was brief. Elena had reached out to him 2 years ago with a cryptic subject line, "Connection to Tasha." Private and time-sensitive. No reply. No follow-up. I printed the email and folded it into my notebook. For 2 days, I didn't say anything. Then one night, Tasha and I were watching an old documentary about protest movements. She sat with her legs curled under her, eyes sharp, questions steady. When the credits rolled, she glanced at me. "Dad? Yeah? Is Elena my real mom?" I didn't flinch. She deserved the truth. "No," I said. "She's not. She was married to someone in your birth family. You were in foster care. I adopted you when you were 4. Her expression didn't change much, but I saw her fingers press slightly into the couch cushion. "So who is?" she asked. I opened the notebook and handed her the printout. She contacted this man. Bennett Klein. "I don't know all the details yet, but I think he might be your biological father." Tasha read the name silently. "Did she ever tell him I exist?" "I don't think so. She handed the page back, eyes narrowed just slightly. Why would she do that? Why lie about him and me? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe because she thought it gave her more control. Or maybe she wasn't ready to share you. Are you mad at her? I'm done trying to feel anything about her. Tasha nodded slowly, absorbing it like she always did, not just the facts, but the angles underneath them. Then she asked, will we meet him? I hesitated. Not out of doubt, but out of respect for what this meant. I can reach out. Quietly. No promises, no pressure. She nodded again. Then, a small voice, I want to know where I come from. But I don't need him to be my dad. I exhaled and leaned back. You're mine, I said. In every way that counts. She gave me a small smile. I know. The room stayed quiet after that. The kind of quiet that comes when a window opens, not wide enough for a storm, but enough to let in fresh air. There were still things I didn't know. Still questions neither of us could answer. But for once, we didn't have to fake certainty. Just honesty. Just forward. I reached out to Bennett Klein a week later, not through email, not with a letter, but the old-fashioned way. I made a call from a burner phone and left a message with nothing more than my name, a brief explanation, and a request for a conversation. He called back the next day. His voice was quiet, a little unsure. I had no idea I had a daughter. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of Sedona. Neutral ground. No expectations. He looked older than the photo I'd found online, gray beard, soft eyes, hands that trembled slightly when he stirred his tea. He didn't ask for proof. He just listened. Elena and I were in a short relationship, he said. She disappeared one day. Never told me she was pregnant. Never contacted me again. She was trying to rewrite history, I said. Tasha was part of that. Bennett nodded slowly, guilt swimming behind his eyes. If she ever wants to talk, I'll be here, but I won't force anything. I'm not trying to take your place. You couldn't, I said. Not with malice. Just truth. We parted without a photo, without a handshake. Just a shared understanding. This was Tasha's story now. We were just caretakers of the pieces. Back home, I found Tasha at her desk, drawing. She was sketching a city map, only the streets were made of words. Truth Maps, the title read at the top. One of her projects for the youth campaign she'd been designing, blending activism with art. Hey, I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. I met with Bennett. She didn't look up. Just kept drawing. He didn't know about you. He's not a bad person. Just a piece of the puzzle Elena kept hidden. Tasha paused, marker in midair. Does he want to meet me? He said only if you want to. She nodded slowly. Then softly, maybe later. I tilted my head. Later? I want to know where I come from, she said. But right now, I like who I'm becoming. My throat tightened. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it. Calm. Assured. Not like a kid looking for a fairy tale ending. Like someone who knew the value of choosing her own pace. I reached for her map and traced the path she was building. You ever feel like I was trying too hard to protect you? I asked. She shrugged. You were scared. I blinked. Of what? That I'd find out something you couldn't control. She looked up at me for the first time. It's okay, Dad. I don't need control. I need honesty. That was the moment I realized something terrifying and liberating. The fortress I'd spent my whole life building? The one made of caution and calculated trust? It wasn't hers to live in. And finally, it wasn't mine anymore either. 6 months later, Elena was serving a federal sentence for wire fraud, conspiracy, and falsifying legal documents. Harding had resigned quietly 2 weeks before the Senate ethics vote, citing a desire to focus on family which no one believed for a second. His staffers scattered like ash in the wind. I never made a public statement about either of them. Didn't need to. My focus had shifted. We renamed the initiative Truth Maps Tasha's idea. What started as her drawing project became a national youth campaign. Interactive platforms that combined civic education with storytelling. Map a truth, trace a lie, dismantle it at the root. That was the pitch. We launched it from a community center in Baltimore with 6 volunteers and a donated projector. Now it had chapters in 12 cities. Tasha co-led the team, standing at the front of each room like she belonged there. Because she did. She wasn't a pawn anymore. She was building her own board. One afternoon, we were at a rally in Durham. Not a protest, a celebration. High school students, young organizers, a few old-timers from the early days. The energy felt different than it used to. Not angry. Not desperate. Just clear. Someone shoved a mic in my face during the final Q&A. Mr. Reyes, the reporter asked, given your track record and public support, do you regret not running for federal office? I smiled, not fake, not practiced. Just real. My legacy's sitting in the front row, I said. They turned to the crowd just in time to catch Tasha standing with two other teens explaining how redlining impacted access to polling sites. That was the future. Not me. Later that night, after the crowd dispersed, we stood outside the venue, sipping bottled water and watching people take down banners. Tasha leaned on the railing beside me. "You think Elena ever really believed in what we were doing?" she asked. I thought about it. The speeches. The strategy. The ambition. She believed in herself, I said. She just forgot what that used to mean. Tasha nodded. I think about her sometimes. Not the last version. The version from when I was little. I do too. She looked up at me. You still mad at her? No, I said. But I'm not waiting for an apology either. Tasha smirked. I figured. We didn't say much after that. Just stood there, father and daughter, watching the last bits of tape come off the walls, the empty chairs stacked, the night folding into quiet. I'd spent most of my life planning for war. Anticipating betrayal. Holding people at arm's length and calling it strategy. But now? Now I was learning something new. Power isn't what you keep for yourself. It's what you teach someone else to carry.